Well, we've all felt the bite of inflation in everyday life. The groceries, gas, building materials, whatever it is, prices go up. But have you ever considered how inflation might affect you as far as your funeral goes, especially if you prepaid a funeral many years ago? It's kind of an interesting topic. I'm guessing you never even thought about it, but that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you want to know more, just stay tuned. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Scan FYI. Interesting topic today. My guest today is Michael Grandi from the Jersey Memorial Group. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Andrea. How are you this morning?
I'm very good. And, I think this is maybe it's an unusual topic for some people, but I think it's very relevant. And yeah, I think it's very important to talk about it. Inflation is affecting us on many levels.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why, when this topic came about, it was something that I said, we could absolutely, address and talk about more and, just provide people information and education that they probably didn't know they needed. Let's put it
That's
that way.
right. You didn't know you needed this. Before we even begin, though, Michael, kindly just introduce yourself and tell everyone a bit about Jersey Memorial Group.
Sure. My name is Michael Grandi. I've been a funeral director now. I'm both in New Jersey and Pennsylvania for 26 years now, and I'm vice president of operations with Jersey Memorial Group. So we're a family-owned network of funeral homes. We operate 15 locations, 13 in New Jersey, two in Pennsylvania, and we own our own crematory as well. So we are, full service funeral business. We do things a little bit different because being that we are large, we believe in outreach, being out in the community, educating consumers. So we do a lot of things outside the four walls of our funeral home rather than waiting for families to call us up with a death or a need or an immediate need like that. So that's basically who we are and what we do.
So just to remind everyone, all of Michael's info, the contact info, we'll put it in this description. And Michael has been a guest on FYI before, and always a very interesting topic, things that I'm guessing you never even thought you needed to know about. So I'd recommend you go back and take a look at some of our previous conversations out there. Okay, so inflation, it's everywhere. You can't you really can't get away from it. It's a fact of life. Apparently, it's a fact of death.
Absolutely. We are a business, right? Just like any business, whether you're an office, whether you're a restaurant, it doesn't make a difference. We have people, we have a building, we rely on other resources,
Right.
so things go up. I mean, salaries, benefits, fueling our vehicles, our car insurance, electric, gas, buying paper products. I mean, we're a place of public accommodation, so obviously, supplying those kinds of things. So as years and time go on, and where consumers are seeing these inflation rates that we haven't seen before. We may not be out there buying groceries for the funeral home, but we are buying things that cost more. And of course, the cost of benefits and things like that are going up. So naturally, like anything else, as time goes on, just like any business, any product that you purchase, you're not going to expect to pay the same thing that you did in 2004 that you are now in 2024. That's just life and it will never change. And it's been that way forever. So yes, we're not
Sadly, you're
immune.
so right. You're right. You're absolutely right. So I don't know, maybe you want to start, I don't know what the best way to start talking about this is, but for example, someone who pre-funded a funeral 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it is, what's happening with that?
Yeah, so I'll briefly explain, a little bit about, pre-funding and we've spoke before, Andrea. We're one of the only industries and businesses that you can actually prepay for something that you're going to need in the future. It's unheard of, right? You're not going to go to a contractor and pay for a kitchen and say, don't come and install it for 20 years. You're not going to go and pay for a vehicle and say, well, deliver me a 2034, but I want to pay for the 2024. That just doesn't happen, right? Everything is an immediate need. I need something, I go and I purchase it. So with funerals, you've always had the ability to come in, sit down with the funeral director, figure out what a funeral would cost, basically in real time, as if you were being serviced that day. And you're able to set aside monies or funds that will go into an account, whether an annuity, a life insurance policy, a trust, to be used in the future to cover the cost of those services.
So when you're having a consultation with a potential client, I guess we have to say it that way, you are talking about how much it's going to cost you today.
Correct. So if we sat down today and you came in and said, Michael, I want to be buried or I want to be cremated, or these are the types of services that I'm looking for, I would basically, as if I was talking to somebody that experienced an active loss, would get all those prices. Even if I don't know the cemetery's charges, we get them on the phone and we call them so that I could give you an actual and factual price of what it would cost today if you needed my services in 2024. Now, we price it today. I don't have the crystal ball. I can't see what the future is going to hold. I can't see another pandemic. I can't see, economical times. So I don't know what the future is going to hold. In 2014, I didn't know that we were going to be seeing unprecedented inflation rates in 2024, or the cost of operating, go up the way that it did. We don't have that crystal ball. So it's all based on the cost of today.
So how are you protecting? All right. So we consult today. You tell me it's going to cost X for what I want, and I give it to you. And now, but maybe I'm going to live for 20 more years. Maybe I'm going to live for 5 more years. We don't know. You're right. No one has the crystal ball. So how am I protected, or my estate protected, I guess? Because obviously if I live, let's say 20 more years, pricing will be very different.
So what basically happens is we take your funds. Your funds would get put aside or placed in, one of these funding vehicles, and those vehicles will continue to gain value or dividends as time goes on. That's utilized to offset the rate of inflation.
Okay.
And what ends up happening is
you're investing my money for.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now,
Got it.
We're not playing with the stock market. It's not risk. I mean, everything is vetted by the state of New Jersey. The companies have to be either guaranteed by, the Department of Banking and Insurance or the New Jersey Guarantee, or, FDIC. So nobody's going to take your money with you. We're not gambling. It's just getting secured. And it will increase with value as time goes on. That interest or those dividends that you would gain on life insurance will accumulate and compound over time, and that will be used to offset what the rising funeral costs were. So I'll give you for instance, if today a funeral was $10,000, and I'm just throwing round numbers out, and if it was 10,000 and that's what you put away, and in 2034 a funeral is 13,000, we're going to hope to have as close to 13,000 as we can, as it built and grown that investment. Now, if it doesn't, say if it only has $12,500 in it, there's something that's called a price guarantee that consumers can get when they do a pre-arrangement. And that would mean that if it was only worth $12,500, we would write off the difference. The family would not have to come up with the additional funds. That's done through a price guarantee. So ultimately, if you prepaid in 2024 and you have a price guarantee, You don't care if inflation is 50%, 80%. You don't care if the cost of things go up by any means, because you know that someday when we have to render these services, the services are going to be done for current market value. You're going to get
Yeah.
everything that you selected with no additional out-of-pocket costs.
I think that's good for people to understand that money is actually invested, and you're going to hope that someone lives a long life, and over
Mhm.
time, the dividends are going to be there so that your business doesn't have to absorb too much extra.
Correct. I mean, listen, that's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah,
When things are normal and you have regular 2% inflation rates, cost of living that goes up, right? That's a perfect scenario. Even these pre-arrangements that go 10 years, these prepaid funerals, it's not, bad for the funeral. Now, if somebody prepaid in 2018 and we have a global pandemic in 2020 and things really go crazy where the cost of raw materials and everything goes up. I mean, we saw a point where fuel was almost $5 a
yeah,
gallon,
yeah.
and even our casket companies and vault companies were charging fuel surcharges for deliveries, because now, they're incurring all these additional costs to do deliveries. We couldn't foresee that. Families that guaranteed their funerals, they, not hit the lottery, but they got a major benefit, because if that death is occurring now or occurred after they prepaid when all that happened, we weren't passing off all these additional charges or saying, hey, you came to see us 3 years ago, but unfortunately things went up 20%. Now you got to come up with additional money. So we just had to absorb those things.
So is there ever a time that the family or the estate, I don't know what the right term is, that they would have to pay extra if you've pre-funded?
So there is. And the only time that that applies is when it is on what we call cash advance items. So, what a cash advance item is, a cash advance item is a third party charge. So, it's a cemetery opening and closing, it's a church fee, it could be an obituary in a newspaper, death certificates, any charge that's unrelated to our normal course of
Right.
business that's
Okay.
imposed by somebody else. Because we do add those on into that funeral so that those monies can be put away and protected as well. Now, reason why those are never guaranteed and the family would have to make up the difference is we can't absorb somebody else's fee. So I'll give you a for instance.
That
You
makes
come in,
sense, by the way. As you're saying it, it
right.
absolutely makes sense.
Yep.
Yes.
You come in today and you prepay a funeral and say the opening closing of your grave is $1,200. In 6 months, if the cemetery says, we haven't had a raise in a long time with our opening closing fee, we're going to go from 1,200 to 1,600. If that death occurs a year later, I can't absorb that $400. I had no
Okay.
control over what that cemetery did. Now, what we will absorb, anything on our end, our services, our vehicles, our building, caskets, burial vaults, urns, if it's merchandise, that's something
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
provide. And even though our manufacturer may increase pricing or the cost of raw materials may go up, those are something provided directly to us, and that's something that would be guaranteed. Anything that's third party is not guaranteed. However, even when those items are put away, interest is still accumulating and offsetting those things as well. So unless there's something drastic that happens, obituaries. 8 years ago, you could put a notice in the newspaper for $200.
Hmm.
Now, the average notice is 700 to 900 in some newspapers, because
Wow.
readership is down and
Yeah.
the cost of their revenue is dropped, and people go online. So the cost of their classified advertising has gone up to offset that loss in revenue. So somebody that prepaid even 8 or 10 years ago at $200, if it's $700 today, there's no way they tripled their money in any annuity or
Right.
policy. So they would have to make up the difference on those types of things.
And I feel like a lot of people probably have these questions but had no one to ask. So I'm asking the questions for everyone. And you know what? Here's a good question.
Mhm.
So let's say that you prepay and because this is the funeral home that you wish to use for everything. What if they go out of business? What happens to your money?
So if we go out of business, and hopefully that never happens. I mean,
No,
we're
no,
actually
not you.
growing our business, but a great question. Or even what if the funeral home's under renovation? They need to do a major
Yeah,
renovation
yeah.
or overhaul, and
Okay.
their chapel's not available. They can't serve you. Or what if you prepay here and you decide, you know what, I'm retiring, I'm going to Florida or the Carolinas, I'm never coming back.
Okay,
So
that's
being
a very realistic scenario as well. Okay.
So all of them
Yeah.
basically pertain to the question you're asking, and it's very simple. The money is funded and put away with a third party, so it's not like the money's in our bank account. We
Okay.
simply have a file here documenting your wishes. You basically take your services and your money wherever you want to go in any state, even Puerto Rico, any territory. So if you decide you're going to move or we couldn't serve you or a funeral home goes out of business, they're never taking your money with them because your money was never in their bank and they never had control of it anyway. It was
Okay.
either in an annuity, a life insurance policy, or with a trust that you get statements with. So that there's a consumer protection there that you would never have to worry about because we're not holding or controlling everything.
All right. That's
So
that's that's a great question.
Mhm.
I'm glad, and I mean that's the answer. And I feel like, okay, so you're not really handing over the money directly to anyone. All right. So that's good. That's peace of mind right there. What is the percentage? I mean, how many people are pre-funding these days? Is this a very common situation?
That's a hard question to answer, simply because it really depends on the consumer or it depends on the funeral. Now, we're the type of funeral home that has invested a lot of time and money in educating consumers, getting out there, doing things like this,
Yeah.
lunch and learns, things like that that really, um, you know, help educate consumers. We've done seminars for religious groups, we've done them for civic groups, veterans organizations, just telling them about veteran benefits. There's so many topics. So, you know, somebody like us in our organization may see a larger influx of people that are pre-funding because they're educated and understand the process, and there's outreach, rather than not knowing. But you'd be surprised. I mean, a large percentage of our at need deaths, when somebody experiences a death, is prearranged or prepaid funerals. And Andrea, I can't tell you how much easier it is, number one, on the families, but number
Of
two,
course.
for us to be able to serve them. Because when a family calls us up and says, Mom just passed away, and now they need help, and I could go and pull a file and say, yep, everything is here. I have all your mom's information. We know what services, we know what church, the cemetery, she picked out her casket. If it's cremation, maybe she picked out urns. And there's no financial transaction that really needs to take place because we have those funds put away. It's basically, when do you want to do things? Do people have to fly in or rearrange schedules? And then we could really begin the process before they ever come into the funeral.
Right.
So it really eases that burden at that time when people are grieving. So there's many, many pros I don't think any cons to, prearranging or prepaying. Now, the other question people get, because you mentioned going out of business or moving, is, and we experienced this for the first time in my career, is what if all the money's not used, right? Now, for instance, during COVID, we were shut down. We
Oh,
couldn't do services. Now, there's
right.
people that put away $15,000 for traditional burials and viewings, and they were forced not to have services.
Yes.
So if they had this beautiful tribute and ceremony planned, and now they couldn't do it because we were in a shutdown, and now we provided just a burial that cost $6,000 or $7,000, the remainder of those monies, the $8,000, went back to the family. You name a beneficiary. So we don't even
Oh,
keep
okay.
all that money if it's not used at the time that you need it. So if something changes, or it's that loved one's wishes to scale back a little bit because situations change, maybe they live to be 95 and they outlived everybody. There's not a need to have this many hours now. They could alter it and change it. And if there's money left over, it could get reapplied towards something else, or it would just go back to the family.
All right. See, that's a great, that was a good, that's a good piece of information. I do feel really strongly that just like having a will, not having a will is a disaster, not for the person who passes away, but for the family. And I feel like if you don't share your wishes, even about your funeral with your family, and nobody knows what you want except you, and now you're gone, um, I've as I've gotten older, I do see the value in doing all of this to not only ensuring that, I get what I want, but that my family doesn't have to be burdened. Not even about the money part of it, but if you want something very specific, y- people need to know, right? And
Exactly.
this is one way to do it. I never thought that I would be having these kinds of conversations, but I do see the value, and I'm so that out there, I'm walking the walk, I'm talking the talk. I'm meeting with Michael to figure out what I want to do. Well, I know what I want to do, but I want to take the burden off my family, and I really see it that way. Just in those moments of terrible grief, it's one less thing you have to burden your family with.
Absolutely. And that's why we enjoy what we do. We enjoy getting in front of families when a death hasn't occurred. And
Right, right.
and for several reasons. Number one, a consumer is making better decisions, more educated decisions.
Yeah.
They're thinking with this and not this, not the
Yes,
heart.
exactly,
And as
exactly.
a funeral director, Andrea, over the years, I've watched a lot of people overspend or maybe do something because they were making a decision based on emotion at that time. And you never want to be making decisions that way because months down the road, after things settle and you're settling affairs, you never want it to be a situation where they wonder if they did the right thing, or should I have done something different, or did I overspend. So those are the things that are important to us to make sure that number one, we know families are budget conscious. Funerals are not one size fits all. We deal with all different socioeconomic statuses, ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, and we want to be able to sit down with that consumer, have constructive conversations, and discuss all those items so that their family's better prepared and not left with any burden.
One thing we always talk about at SCAN is knowing what your resources are, being prepared. And I always like to say, a resource has no value if you don't know it exists. And right now, here is Michael Grandi, an incredible resource. And I would encourage anyone listening to, not that I'm looking to drum up business, but I just believe knowledge is power. You should ask, you should get the answers while you still can. And here's the man to help you. So
Well,
again, all of Mike's info will be in the description. Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much for being with me today. This was really a very good topic. I hope that everyone found value in it. I sure did. Thank you, Michael.
All right, you're very welcome, Andrew. It was a pleasure spending time with you this morning again, and providing some of that information that people normally don't seek out. So,
That's right. That's right. So remember out there, if it's important to you, it's important to us. I'm Andrea Tarr, and we'll see you next time on Scan FYI. Bye, everyone, and bye, Mike.
bye, Andrea.